This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hey everyone, I'm Ace of Clay, and today I'm sculpting the Faun from Pan's Labyrinth, the eerie, ancient creature who guides Ophelia through a dark and magical world. With twisted horns, bark-like skin, and an unsettling presence, he is definitely one of Guillermo del Toro's most iconic designs. And I really hope you enjoy watching the process of me sculpting him. And look who's back for Christmas in July, the Holiday Hellions, both the classic version and the fully posable face hugger variant. These are available right now through July only, or while supplies last, at aceofclay.com. So if you missed them around the holidays, now's your chance to get one. Now without further ado, let's make the Faun.
Alright, let's get started. I have one of my wooden bases with the pre-drilled holes and some 10 gauge armature wire. I'm going to start by shaping out one side of the Faun's body. I'm working my way up the leg onto the torso, and then I'm going to make a 90-degree angle to create the shoulder, and then work my way down to the arm and the wrist. Then we'll trim it, mirror it to create the other side, and then wrap it together with a piece of 16 gauge wire along with some 10 gauge for the neck. Now I'm just going to adjust the pose, and then we can start bulking it out after I apply some bacon bond so my ultralight sticks. Bulking can also be done with aluminum foil. I just prefer the ultralight because it's way easier to control. While I'm bulking out the torso, I want to make sure that it's slightly smaller than the final size I want, because the clay that I'm going to add on top of this is going to make it bigger. After a little bit of smoothing and some more positioning, our bulking is done. After it's baked, we're going to apply our final layer of clay. This is Living Doll. I'm going to add a nice even sheet over my ultralight area, and then we can start working our way onto the limbs. Before I add the clay, I just want to brush on some bacon bond so the clay sticks really well to the wire. This is way faster and I think just as effective as wire wrapping. And I'm just shaping out the thighs and hip area. Now I'm going to work my way up for a sec and start detailing the chest. To create the separation from his chest to his stomach area, I'm using a snake of clay and blending the top edge in with the rest of it. Then we're going to start adding some pectoral muscles and his neck. Using a small ball stylus, I'm going to start carving in some of the details on the neck. And using my spoon tool, we're going to blend in those pectoral muscles. Once I have the chest roughed out, I'm going to use my spoon tool to sort of map out where all the other details are going to go on his abdomen. And then I can start refining things with this cone shaper tool. And he's got a little band of fur around this area here, so I'm just carving in that with my Explorer tool. Rocking my Explorer tool like this allows me to create this texture without dragging it and getting all those little tiny pieces of clay that get in the way. Now he's got these two big swirls on each pectoral muscle, so we're going to go ahead and shape those out now, along with some fun little cracks here and there. And he's got 4 nipples, so let's go ahead and add those now. Once his upper body is looking pretty good, we're going to work our way back down and start detailing the legs some more. His body is covered in so much great texture. It's like a combination of skin and bark, and there's just so many little nooks and crannies and details to carve in. My favorite parts are these little swirls he's got here and there. Uh-oh, what's that? It's my new spoon tool coming your way at the end of the summer. I took the trusty spoon tool that I've used since day one, perfected it, and while working on this project, I realized just how much I needed it. It's got the classic spoon end, and on the other side, what I'm calling the little spoon. The little spoon handles all the spots the big one can't reach, with a super long neck for easy maneuvering and control. I have been working on this thing for years. I'm not exaggerating. It has been years in the making, and I cannot wait for you to finally get it in your hands. I really think you're going to love it as much as I do. And we're just going to work our way down that leg and keep detailing it just like we were doing with everything else. Man, I am so excited about this spoon tool, you have no idea. And there are a couple more surprises that are going to come along with it that I'm not going to show in this video, so I'm not revealing everything just yet, but just like I said, working on this project, I had to pick it up and use it because it's making my life so much easier, and it's really making this sculpting process more enjoyable. Like, look at that little spoon. Look at how it's just getting in there, and it's just smoothing everything out, and it's so handy. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about the spoon tool. It speaks for itself, and again, I cannot wait for you to have it in your hands. All right, now we're just gonna keep detailing things and add some little branches sticking out here and there, blend them in with my little spoon, and keep going. And before I start carving in my detail, I just want a nice surface to start with. Then I'm going to carve out some bark and some knots with my ribbon tool, smooth everything out, and just go crazy. And I just jumped to the other leg really quick. We're going to detail this the same way as the first one we did, just with some little different nuances here and there, so they're not identical, of course. And then he's got two different looking feet. This one that I'm doing right now looks like a hoof, and then the other one looks more like a root system. Now this one's going to have a bunch of little branches coming off of it, so I want to use some flexible clay so they don't break after it's baked. And of course, we can't forget to detail his back, so we're going to go ahead and slap on some details now. Now it's time for the head. I'm going to ball up a piece of aluminum foil, cover that in clay, and then we can start pressing out all the details, starting with the eyes. Now I understand, yes, this is a faun. Yes, fawns are half goat, half human, but his face is kind of cat-like, especially his eyes. So we're going to go ahead and use our little spoon to carve those out. I want to get deeper and deeper around them with every pass of my spoon tool. And I added some clay for the nose, and we're going to go ahead and refine everything. And if you ever find yourself adding too much clay, you can always cut it off. Now let's move down to the mouth area. If you've been watching my channel for a while, you probably know when I sculpt a face, I always jump around. I don't fully finish one feature before moving on to the next. I'll rough out the eyes, and then the nose, and then the mouth, and then the jawline, and just loosely block everything out. I do this because I want to see how everything works together before I spend the time perfecting and detailing each part. It's way easier to adjust proportions or reposition things early on, rather than realizing later that something feels off after I've already spent hours refining one area. So I'll start with a little bit of everything, just enough to get the whole face mapped out, and once I know it all looks balanced or like the character I'm sculpting, then I go back and refine each feature one by one. And he's got these little subtle nasolabial folds, so I'm just using a flattened snake of clay and blending that in very carefully.
All Alright, we're going to take a quick break from our video to talk about our sponsor, Squarespace. I've been using Squarespace for over 6 years now, and it has been a game changer. It's helped me grow my online presence and streamline my work effortlessly. As a business owner, I need a website that functions seamlessly and looks great, and Squarespace delivers. One of my favorite features is their SEO tools. Squarespace makes it easy to get discovered with built-in meta descriptions and sitemaps, which helps my site rank higher without any extra effort. I also love Squarespace Payments. I really like it because I can process all of my payments through the same dashboard that I'm already using. It's super easy to set up, and I can accept payments instantly through multiple methods like Apple Pay and Klarna. No hassle, just smooth transactions. And if you're selling products or services like I am, their online store tools are top-notch. From inventory to fulfillment, everything is built in for a seamless experience. Ready to build your site? Go to squarespace.com, start a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/aceofclay to save 10% on your first purchase.
Now for some cheekbones. Now his forehead might just look like one big flat surface at first glance, but there's a lot going on up here that you don't notice right away. He's got a pretty prominent brow ridge, but it's not so heavy that it hangs over his eyes, and if you look closely, the whole area is full of subtle dips and valleys and little contours. And then I'm going to bring out his jaw a little bit more and make his chin more pronounced. And then really carve out those smile lines. And once one side looks pretty good, we're going to do the same thing on the other. Now let's poke in those nostrils with our super poker. Knowing when a sculpture or a section of your sculpture is done is tricky because honestly, it never really feels finished. There's always another tiny detail you could tweak, a texture you could refine, or a line you could smooth out some more. But at some point, you have to step back and ask yourself, does it feel complete? Does it capture the character, the emotion, the idea that you set out to create? If the answer is yes, even with a few imperfections, that's when it's done. Otherwise, you'll keep chasing perfect forever, and perfect doesn't exist in art. Now we're going to make his horns without smashing his face. I'm going to add some 16 gauge wire, shape out the horn, and then add some flexible clay on top of that and start carving them out. And of course, it's much easier to sculpt the horns when they are not attached to the head. And lucky for me, he's got this seam running down the inside of each horn. To make that, I'm just going to leave the wire exposed along the surface. Once it's painted, it'll look totally natural, and it saves me a ton of time compared to sculpting that detail from scratch. And here's some blurry footage showing me attaching the horn, and then we are going to add a peak along the back like so and blend that in with my spoon tool. Now we're going to add a bunch of little ridges all the way down each horn with my Explorer tool. Now using a snake of clay, I'm going to create the area where the horn meets his skull. And there we go. Horn number 1 is complete. Let's make the other one off camera and then sculpt his ears. After brushing on some Bacon Bond, I just want to blend the ear clay into the head clay and add a subtle fur texture. All right, now back to the back. We're gonna add a bunch of details without smashing the front, which is going to be relatively easy because the arms are still just wire and I can hold on to those when I'm sculpting and I don't have to touch his chest. Now I just want to add a few more details and cracks to the front before I pre-bake him. After filling the hole in his head with some bacon bond, we're going to slide it onto our wire and get this guy in the oven. After a couple more little details here and there. Once he's pre-baked and cooled down, it's time to make the arms. I'm going to start with the basic arm shape, just like we did with his legs, and then add a bunch of detail to it. And of course, I'm using flexible clay for any delicate areas, like this super cool shoulder. Creating a convincing bark texture is basically all about layering. You start by mapping out the bigger shapes with one tool, then go back over it with another and another and another, building up the detail little by little. The more lines, grooves, and little nooks you add, the more natural and realistic it starts to look. It really is just about taking the time to stack those layers until it feels right. Now for the hand, we're going to start with the base of the hand and then attach each finger individually. I do have a dedicated hand sculpting tutorial on my channel if you want to check that out for more detail and in-depth instruction on hand creation. Once all the fingers are on, we need to fidget with them until it looks convincing. Now for a couple more little branches and tree nubs. Now for his beard. Before I attach the clay for the beard, I'm going to brush on some bacon bond so that the clay sticks really well to my cured clay. I'm going to start by the lower beard here, and then blend that in with my little spoon and add all of that beardy texture. For the hair on his head, I pre-textured each piece before applying it because it's way easier to do it that way. You just have to make sure you don't smash out the texture when you're applying it to the sculpture. And you can always go in, of course, and refine and nitpick things after, like I'm doing here. I love sculpting hair because it's like the point in the project where like, okay, everything else is done, now you just got to pop the hair on. There's just something so satisfying about carving out those flowing strands and building up the layers until it feels full and natural. You know, hair lets you add movement, personality, and texture in a way that can only change the vibe of a piece, whether it's wild and messy, smooth and elegant, or something in between. It's one of those parts of sculpting that never feels like work, you know, because it's just fun to watch it take shape. When you're blending uncured clay hair into a cured face like this, I'm using my Explorer tool and I'm pressing a little firmly so the strands really meld into the surface. The pressure makes the hair look like it's actually growing out of the skin, and once it's baked and painted, it'll feel seamless. And this nice little chunk is going to go on the back of his head, like so. I love how this looks. It kind of looks like action figure hair. And let's go ahead and finish up that hairline. Now we've got one more thing to sculpt, and that's his little knapsack that he's got around his shoulder. So we're going to go ahead, and I covered a piece of foil with my clay, and we're just carving out the sack like so, adding some seams, and then the flap that goes over top. Oh, and it's sort of held together with a bone, so I'm going to create each side of the bone and stick them onto our bag. And let's attach the flap, make sure the wrinkles are how we want. And he's got a little bone going across the front here and some little pieces of rope hanging down. There we go, not too shabby. I'm also going to make the strap out of a flattened snake of clay, texture it with this little brush thing, then I'm going to bake it over his shoulder like this, and we'll super glue the bag on later. And there we go. He's looking pretty done to me. Let's go ahead and bake him. And once he's cooled down, I'm going to start by priming him with some matte black Kaleido acrylic primer. This is Gallery's new paint line. I'm using a Gallery airbrush. This is the Mobius 0.2 millimeter. Absolutely love it, and I'm trying their paints for the first time. And unfortunately, the only one that I'm using for this project is the black matte primer, just because their color line hasn't been fully released yet. So I do have to use my regular paints for the browns that I'm adding here. But if you want to save 10% at gallery.com, you can use my code AceOfClay. Get yourself an airbrush, a compressor, maybe try out some of their new paints or their paint markers. Everything that they make is amazing, and I'm not just saying that. And I'm just building up my browns. I'm getting lighter and lighter, especially on the face. I want to give myself a nice base before I start going in and painting with a brush. I love airbrushing. Once you get the hang of it, it is so much faster than hand painting with a brush, especially for priming. And you know, I can't imagine, like, I could do it with a brush, I could paint this thing, but it would have taken twice as long, and it wouldn't have been nearly as smooth. Anyway, now it's time to hand paint. We're going to start with the hair, this nice red shade. Once the red is on, I'm going to go in with a dark wash and make sure it gets into all of that nice hair and beard texture. Now for the eyes, we're going to start with the whites, of course, and then go from there. And using some darker brown, we're going to get into those nice swirls on his forehead. And using another brown wash, I'm going to darken the areas around the eyes and just kind of get into the different shadows on his face. And we're going to add a wash to the horns as well to get into all those details. All right, so far so good, no catastrophic events. Let's go ahead and paint those goat irises, starting with our nice green color. And then the pupils. To further heighten the detail on the horns, I'm going to dry brush on some light brown. And we're going to highlight some things with some more dry brushing all over his body. And he does have some little hints of green here and there, so we're going to dry brush that on too. To bring out some of the lines and contours on his body, I'm going in with a dark brown wash and a fine paintbrush. And we're going to add a couple highlights to his beard and hair as well. For the bag, I'm going to start by painting the bones and washing them to make them look a little dirty, and then we're going to paint up the bag. Just layer this light brown color until it looks like this. Then we're going to paint that bone in the front and get this attached. It's going to look pretty good. Now let's paint up his base and say it with me.
And he's done! My sculpture of the Faun from Pan's Labyrinth is complete. Let me know how you think I did in the comments. This is such a fantastic character design. I just can't get over how much I love this creature, and to think he's in the same movie as the Pale Man, it just blows my mind. I think the sculpture turned out really nice. I like all the detail that I was able to capture. He's got a semi-dynamic pose, kind of like looking off to the side. I think that's really cool. I love how his face turned out, and carving out all that bark was a lot of fun. So I really hope you enjoyed watching the process. Let me know again what you think in the comments, and as always, thank you so much for watching and being here. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Check me out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Ace of Clay, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.